So, yeah,
Yeah, this clock is just a
my
minute or
watch is,
two.
my watch is a little slow then.
Oh.
Good evening and welcome to the Carlisle Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. I'm going to read through the agenda. We may take some of these things out of order, but we will try to stay on schedule here. At 7 o'clock, we have community input. At 7:05, we have a one-day beer and wine application from the Gleason Public Library. At 7:10, we're going to get an update on the complete streets and the proposed speed limit. We'll talk about the proposed speed limit public meeting from next week. At 7:20, there will be a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. And we'll discuss FY20 planning discussion, and we will discuss the warrants for the October 2nd special town meeting and do an appointment. At 8 o'clock, we will get an update on the fire chief search process. At 8:15, the town administrator's report. At 8:25, liaison reports. At 8:35, approval of minutes, and then at 8:40, we will be adjourning. With that, I will ask if there is anybody here for public input. Please, if you could please come up to the podium here and state your name and your address, and speak into the microphone. The microphone doesn't amplify your voice, but you're on TV, and
Excellent.
so it allows them to hear you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm Kathy McDonald, and I live at 33 Knoll Farm Road. And I am here on a bit of a spur of the moment, in that I read the announcement today that the Affordable Housing Committee had resigned in total. And I was really disappointed to hear that. And I wanted to register, as I believe it's the obligation of the Select Board now to figure out what to do in the face of that resignation. And as I've been following along for many years, I've been in Carlisle now for 9 years, it really seems that there's a high degree of dysfunction as it relates in our town's ability to make progress on the imperative around affordable housing. And I understand there's lots of different opinions in town about whether that's an imperative or not, but I think that we owe it to have a rational and functional process on which we're embarking on that on an ongoing basis. I think particularly at this point in time, as we're in the midst of a master planning process, it's going to be really important for that to be one of the things that's addressed there, and now will be made more difficult because we were not able to sort of get the leadership of the town working together effectively on that front. So I want to, I believe that the town has, that there's many people in the town that see affordable housing as something that may be a positive contributor to the town, both from a diversity and from a moral obligation, if you will, perspective on what we have to do as citizens. And so I would hope that we can create a positive dialogue about how to address this going forward. And I would be, while I'm not able to serve on a committee such as that myself, given other obligations in my life, I would very much be willing to try to help as it relates to create more of a functional approach to how we go forward with that. And that's a bit of my day job and things that I do. But wanted to just express the support for that and look forward to hearing about the dialogue going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just so you know, because I'm not sure I've seen you here before, but for community input, we generally don't respond to it because then it would become a discussion that wasn't on the agenda.
I understand how it works.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here for public input? Okay. All right, so let's move on to the one-day beer and wine application. So we have here, I guess first I'll say that I think we talked about it before, but just so everybody knows, Tim is out sick. He has bronchitis, and so he will not be joining us tonight. So bear with me as I try to do this without him. Okay, so we have a one-day beer and wine application for the Gleason Public Library for Friday, October 12th, 2018, from 7 to 9. It doesn't say too much about what the event itself is.
It's an art event, I believe.
They're having an art.
An art?
Yeah.
Okay.
The artists are exhibiting.
Okay, so for an art exhibit, does anybody have any questions or anything? Is anybody from the library here? Okay.
All right, I move the Board of Selectmen grant a one-day wine and malt beverages license pursuant to MGL Chapter 138, Section 14, to Gleason Public Library for an event to be held at 22 Bedford Road, Carlisle, Mass. 01741, on October 12th, 2018, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., subject to the applicant providing a host liquor liability insurance certificate.
Okay, great.
Second.
Thank you for the second. I guess I just want to add that Chief Fisher did sign this, and we've done many of these for them, and we have never had a raucous party, so
I
we're still hoping.
I also wanted to mention that I was pleased to see that this had already had a sign-off. Last meeting, we had 2 licenses that were removed, subject to the police signing off, and I did request that in the future, if possible, that we would get these to our table with the sign-off first. And so I'm very pleased to see that that procedure was followed.
All righty. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye? Aye. It's unanimous. Okay, complete streets. We're already ahead of time.
We don't have our town administrator to fill in.
Yeah, so
further.
I will go ahead and jump to the town administrator's report.
Here we go, complete streets.
Yeah, but we need to have our audience to be able to be here.
So, I will pretend I'm the town administrator. Pumpkins on the Common, the Gardens Club has requested the use of the town common on October 15th for the annual Pumpkins on the Common event. Previously, they've also received the permission from the First Religious Society. You can all read what's in front of you, but everybody can't see it. So is there any discussions or concern about, first of all, though, Jen, do you know, is it the 13th or the 15th? That's the Saturday? Okay, so we'll go with what's in the motion. So it's on the 13th, not on the 15th, as I stated. Anybody have any comments or?
No? It's like the library function, this is another one
Yeah.
that we don't usually have any trouble at, and we've had it many years running, so I think it's a good deal.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion. I move to approve the request of the Carlisle Garden Club to use the town common from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on October 13th, 2018, for their annual Pumpkins on the Common event.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
You do aye?
I did
Okay.
aye.
It's unanimous. I'm going to skip number 2 and go to approval of an alternate posting method. So the Code of Massachusetts regulation provides that towns can adopt an alternate posting method for public meetings. Our town clerk, Mary, has requested that the selectmen consider adopting the newly redesigned town website as an official means of posting notices. She will still maintain the first floor bulletin board, but not the plastic bin outside of town hall. So this means you can still come in and see it. It's still in the mosquito, right? But it's not gonna be in the binder outside. It will be on the town website.
Should be really nice.
Does anybody have any questions about this? Any comments from anybody?
I move that the board adopt the Town of Carlisle website, www.carlislemass.gov, as the official method of posting public meeting notices pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Subchapter 20.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all right. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
It's unanimous. And the town hall office hours, we have one more minute. So as you all know, from Memorial Day through Labor Day, we had the extended office hours on Tuesdays and shortened on Fridays. They've would like to propose a a change to this. They've seen more traffic on Tuesdays. They would like to suggest extending the workday to 4 o'clock on Monday through Thursday and working until 12 o'clock on Fridays. I guess I'm wondering why we're not going back to regular hours, because that's a summer hours thing?
It sounds like the summer hours thing.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had missed the significance of this when I read through it earlier. I'd like to propose that we put this aside
I
until
think we
next
need to
meeting.
figure out,
Yeah.
It seems to me that what he meant to do was extend Tuesday a little longer, maybe? Anyway, well, we'll have to see.
Jen, unless you know more about this, it seems like this is keeping the summer hours, but just adjusting a little bit.
I think he just wanted to, my thought, I think what he was thinking of doing was the public hours right now are posted 9 to 4,
Uh-huh.
or, excuse me, 9 to 3, Monday through Friday. He would like the public to know that we're still open till 4, majority of us still work till 4. But the hours, public hours will be shortened on Friday. Not to say that some people can't still work later, it's just the public
Right,
hours.
but this
It just
is-
allows people to come in that extra hour.
But isn't this suggesting that, other than that, it's still summer hours?
Let's
No,
find out.
summer hours went
Yeah.
9 to 3.
Well, this is still saying closing on 12 o'clock on Fridays.
Yeah, but this, instead of, this 9 to 4, Monday through Thursday, 12 o'clock on Fridays. Not- And summer hours are 9 to 3.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so we'll
Let's
just
find
get
out.
that. Yeah. Okay.
One more thing, if we can come back to it.
Yeah, so we have 2 more to come back to. We'll go ahead and skip on to Complete Streets, the update. So Complete Street application, which is due on October 1st, and then discussion of the speed limit hearing, that's September 17th. Hello.
Good evening.
The Complete Streets update. You should perhaps have this in your packet. Okay.
Yes.
So,
This is Deb Belanger and Chief Fisher.
yes. Yes, we are.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
So, to repeat, we have 2 grant programs that we are pursuing. One is MassWorks and one is Complete Streets. One way to think about the 2 is that Complete Streets is a grant program that supports towns improving what they have from a safety and accessibility standpoint. MassWorks is a grant program that we are using to expand what we have. So Complete Streets is to fix, MassWorks is to expand. So the Complete Streets application will be completed by the end of this week in terms of tech's responsibilities, the engineering firm. It's due on October 1st. We would like to get it in or before October 1st. So the time frame is sometime next Monday, but in any event, not later than October 1st. There are no issues emerging from the work that they're doing. It's just time in the seat to fill out all of the exhibits and schedules. The Complete Streets warrant article went to the planning board last night, and they voted unanimously to support it. FinCom received a very brief overview, a first overview, and there were some questions, but what I understand is they have a couple more meetings, and will take a position, when appropriate. So that's a Complete Streets MassWorks update.
Okay, so the application is the expansion one, right?
Sorry.
The 10-1 application?
The 10-1 application is for Complete Streets,
Okay.
which is the town center improvements
Mhm.
for crosswalks, the rotary design, filling in the pathway segment that's missing between Bedford and East.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right in the center of town.
And the 85,000 being requested is to help with that or to add on to that?
The Complete Streets does not pay for design funds. So that is the portion of funding for design funds with a contingency. This is based on a preliminary estimate and preliminary, just conceptual designs. So we want to be sure we have sufficient funds to get through all of our boards, provide the proper research, provide the proper information. So it's essentially our match to what the state is willing to fund. They will not do the design, they will do the construction.
So it's also contingent upon their giving us
Yes.
the grant.
So specifically, we have 4 projects that total $485,000. And each project is its own separate item with its own budget. The state could reject all 4, accept only 1, or some variety. The design funds that we would use would be only the design funds for the grants that were actually awarded in the proportion of how design funds are budgeted, which is typically 15%.
Okay.
So we will not have, if we, Foxborough went to this 4 times before they got it approved. If, be sheer luck if we came in and out of this with an approval this first time around. But were we to get an approval, for any portion of that approval, the $85,000 is the limit, and it is proportionate to what has been approved by grant.
Okay. And the application is being submitted by the Board of Selectmen?
Yes, but Tech is actually doing the physical work, so Tim Goddard and Mike Myers and I are working on the upload. I think you've already voted to complete the application. I don't believe there's another vote required to apply.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or?
I think it's amazing what a little tweaking can do to improve safety by quite a bit in terms of the preliminary plans that we've seen. It's just, yeah.
And it's also really nice that, of 85,000 is all that we'll have to be ponying up for a really large project, which will significantly affect and improve quality of life in this town, I think. So
It's 15 cents on the construction dollar. It's not bad. We used CPA funds in the past for phase 1, and that state subsidy was far less than 85%.
Okay. The only one thing I want to ask is whether, I just wanted to ask again whether or not I could get a copy of the.
I wish Tim were here. I have sent a couple emails following up on that, and
Okay.
I will continue to do that.
Okay, so you don't have a copy of it? They didn't?
Well, what happened is that we had an oral presentation. They came in, they had their top prioritizations from having reviewed, and we had, as a Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, Complete Streets Committee, we had additional projects which fell in the tier 3 and 4 category. So we came in to expand it to 15, and they addressed the more urgent projects. When they presented it, we received an overview of how they arrived at it. And it essentially, were you to have sat in the room, which, was just, it's not possible, but it's so obvious. So we got all the information orally. It was all common sense. I almost feel like we didn't need to hire an engineering firm to be told some of this. But the documentation is sitting in their files, and I have asked for it.
Okay, all right.
And I will obtain it.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome. I apologize for the delay.
Anything else about that particular?
So should we be successful, I understand that this program allows us to spend it and then go back for more
Yes.
immediately without a wait period.
Yes, this is a rolling
So
program.
we can look at our priorities and go to the next chunk on
Exactly.
the priorities, go right back.
It gets tricky because some of the projects are well in excess of $400,000. So when we do that, we would be coming forward with more than a 15% match. but we wanted to make sure we got what was really urgent done first.
Okay.
And if we get approval, then we will begin the design work immediately. Hopefully conclude it before snow cover, so that we can then use the succeeding months to go through the review process.
And so Tech, or that's the name of the company, right? Tech?
Yes.
Do we have to put out that design, or can they just go right into the design work?
No, we have to put out the
We have to
design.
put out we have to bid it? Okay. Right, so there's
Yeah.
some time that has to elapse there.
Right. Yeah,
Think warm.
yeah, I think, I'm sure they will be bidding on it. I'm sure Stamsky and McNary will be bidding on it. You know, the likely,
Yeah, we could do worse.
Two companies that would know Carlisle well, I guess.
yes, it does help.
Yeah.
The second thing on the agenda was for the chief and I to come and just give you an update on the safety forum. Would you like to cover that? Or?
Well, so I guess this is, as much as anything, a public venue that we can ask for as many people as possible to participate in this. It's really a nice opportunity. We had some vocal folks and a spirited, great meeting last time. And I think, you know, from the police side, it's really important that the folks in Carlisle and our leadership in Carlisle have the most say in things like this. So we've, you know, through town meeting, we got the ability for you folks, but, you know, our town's folks, to talk about what they want the speed limits to be and where they want people to go at certain rates of speed. You know, we have the documentation and statistics to prove that people are driving too fast. We have more cars. I think things that, you know, we all know are occurring, but we have the data to go along with it. But importantly, you know, we'd like as many people as possible to weigh in on both sides. Obviously, I hear things, other members of traffic safety, and probably you all have had phone calls, emails, conversations with folks about this. This would be a really nice opportunity for people in Carlisle to come out on the 17th and discuss it. Because from the enforcement side, you know, we need to have kind of a minimalist role, because our role is to enforce the rules that people in Carlisle choose to have for their town. So, you know, and I'm going to try to take a low-key approach at this. You know, talk about statistics, talk about enforcing that people need, but really more importantly, listen to how people would like the rules they choose enforced, or if they choose to change the rules. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we really want to use this as an opportunity, you know, on television to you folks, just to, you know, if anybody can mention it, get the word around, that the 17th will be a nice opportunity.
It's information gathering. It's not conclusive. It's, there will be a follow-on action steps taken in other public meetings after it.
It's a great opportunity to get involved in something that's going to be visible, right?
And which is going to affect everybody in
Right.
town.
Yep.
Right. And so I think we had talked to last time about different places we could post it.
There was a press release done,
Okay.
and it is on the monthly calendar for the mosquito,
Okay,
and I believe a legal notice last 2 weeks ago.
okay.
And I've had some people comment on it, so that it has gotten out.
Oh, good. So it's at the school on September 17th at 7 p.m.
And again, it's another small d democracy opportunity. It's not like somebody decided, you know, arbitrarily to post some sign out on the street that everybody has to obey. This is the town getting to decide this, and if they don't, townspeople don't come and voice their opinions, I don't want to hear any complaints afterwards.
We've included a very summary outline of what we would cover in the forum, and the idea would be that we would provide a brief description of the enabling legislation that was passed, and then the town meeting approval that gave us the capacity to manage our speed limits. And then we would provide the rationale for why TSAC has made this recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, which includes things like increased volume and speed and site distances. We would then provide a location map to show where the speed limit segments are, people can visualize that. And we're hoping that Stamsky and McNary will have completed their condition analysis of the crosswalks on Bedford, so that we have that piece to include as well. So that is the guts of it, and just to open it up and ask folks there to tell us what their experience is as motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians. Is there a problem? What is the problem? What are the fixes? What can we talk about? And speed is the most obvious way to improve safety.
Okay.
It's sort of number one, and then 2 and 3 are really deep. Have you had an opportunity to think about moderating the forum? Who would you like? Do you want TSAC to do it? Do you want to do it?
Were we asked to think about it?
Yeah.
And we can show up that night and figure it out there, too.
Yeah.
It's not,
TSAC has taken the lead
Yeah.
on this.
Right. I think what Chief is saying, though, is that we really want this to be a neutral presentation, that we are considering lowering the speed limits, A, and we are considering lowering them in these sections. Not, because TSAC has made the recommendation that we want to do that.
Yeah.
We want to make sure the forum is really an open exchange of ideas.
Yeah, I would think that, I guess my preference would be that it's somebody on the Board of Selectmen, just because then it's us that would be kind of ultimately saying, do it. But it's not us that are doing the recommendations. So it would seem to me like we would want to moderate the public input.
So we'll do the front end, and then we've got a couple of questions from the community already. I guess there's a rec department event that night where kids need to be picked up at 7 o'clock at Banta. And so,
As long as they don't speed.
so there's a request that after we do our little preamble, to have an early show of hands of where people are in terms of speed, so the people who are leaving have an opportunity to at least express where they stand.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how you feel about that, but I wanted to,
I'm sorry, it's not on here. What time is it? I thought it was 7.
it's 7, so they're leaving kids there while they are waiting.
So how are they going
Real
to show their
quick.
hands?
Well, they're going to wait for as long as they can possibly wait, and then they're going to go get their kids in the dark.
Okay. Unfortunately, though, then they don't get to get the full discussion to be able to
Right.
form an opinion.
Yeah.
They are just,
Yeah.
They're doing it based upon
right.
the information they have already at that time, and this is meant to give more information.
Right.
Um,
There may be a different vehicle for people to express after the evening.
uh-huh.
Maybe we could put something up on the website.
Or have another Board of Selectmen meeting where people can come after this
Sure.
thing, and they can come in and.
that might be the right thing.
I have a conflict and can't make it on Monday. I'm wondering, what would be the best way for people to weigh in if they can't make it, to,
I think at the next meeting, the follow-on Board of Selectmen meeting.
Yeah, so why don't we do that? We'll have this public input meeting.
Yeah.
Get us on the agenda for the
moderated,
next one.
and then, maybe we won't even close the public hearing.
Yeah, I think that's a good
We'll
idea.
just keep the
And
public hearing
open
open.
to the
I'll
25th.
extend it until the 25th,
Hmm.
and then we can still have it, and then we can
That's a
close
good
it and then
idea.
vote on it.
I'm wondering if that will give us enough time to process the input and have a sort of meaningful follow-up meeting.
We can still,
That wouldn't be the follow-up, it would be still necessary.
It will be the first meeting after the forum, so we will have 1 week to take in the input on the 17th, to come to the Board of Selectmen on the 25th. 25th?
No,
No,
the
but you don't have to
25th
come.
would be
You don't-
the
you just have to come to a
continuation.
public
Your record-
hearing
we're not-
For people who can't make it.
All
on
we're
the-
doing is-
Deliberate again.
All we're saying is, there's more discussion on the 25th.
Okay, I got
In
it.
fact, we wouldn't
Public-
want you
more
to be
public
coming,
input.
we wouldn't want you coming with anything,
that's why I
because
was-
we want it to still be
Perfect.
a public discussion.
Open.
Yes.
Super, that's perfect.
Okay, so, so we're gonna continue the public hearing to September 25th. All right. Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will move on to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, between the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Do we have enough for you have a quorum of the Finance Committee?
We do not. So it's actually
Okay.
just myself tonight.
Okay.
Jim is here for,
So it's not a joint meeting.
it's not a joint meeting.
Okay.
So
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, no, thank you for having us. This is a opportunity to check in with the kickoff of the process for the budget that starts in about a week or two. And the Finance Committee's actually met over the last month to begin to prepare to kick this off. And like we did last year, I think it's good to get together before we kick this off. And that kickoff is marked by a budget process letter that goes out. But it's good to get together just to talk through what that process looks like. And I think most of you were here last year. Alan, you were not here, but you were part of the process as we kind of went through it. So I think that's kind of the main objective for that first topic under the FinCom Board of Selectmen topic. And one thing that we did, and just to highlight some of the progress that was made, last year there was quite a number of changes to the process. And we actually met during the summer and talked a little bit about how the process went. And a lot of things were great improvements over the prior year. I was not on the board, on the committee the prior year, so a lot of it was obviously the folks who had been part of the process for 2 years in a row. I think one thing that they noted.
Or it was just the new member.
Yes, that's right. One thing that was noted was the communication between the Board of Selectmen and FinCom was a lot better, which is great. Always room for improvement, but definitely great to be working much closer together, especially amongst lots of different voices kind of in that process. I think the other aspect of it too is really being working closely with the committees and the departments using that questionnaire. I think that really helped to focus and get the information that was necessary to be able to develop essentially the guidance and such. I think the 2-day meeting, we kind of went to that format of kind of concentrating all the meetings was really helpful very quickly to be able to get through the meetings and to be able to, at the very end of it, as opposed to spreading it out over weeks and weeks and trying to get everything together so we can begin to work towards that, the guidance that in December. The only key thing that kind of came up that I think you guys recognize and kind of lived through as well was anything that had to do with adding staff or hours. Oh, that was a big challenge because of the personnel board and that whole process. And I think that's something that I think everybody recognizes and is going to work towards this year in terms of that aspect. So really, with kind of a very successful process last year and some of these great gains in terms of working through the process this year isn't significantly different. It's and we'll go through it. It's some tweaks here and there, but by and large, we've kind of followed the same kind of approach to the process as last year. One of the things that you will see, and I can hand out the letter, in the letter, and this, we're not going to go through the letter line by line, but one of the things that you will see in there is a comment in there, as well as in the questionnaire, we added a question around looking for effectiveness opportunities. And I think that's actually pinned on the kind of similar observation as last year, and you'll see it in the letters that, revenue generation, it's limited, but our expenses are increasing quickly because of things like OPEB, healthcare costs. Obviously, we have the big facilities dollar figure that's coming up. So one way that we can approach that is to say, how can we utilize the resources that we have more effectively? And so we did add a question into the questionnaire as we're kind of talking with the different departments. And that is an aspect that we've already started a little bit with, kind of a little pilot that last year when I was a liaison for Conscom, they were looking for additional hours. And one of the things at the very end, they didn't get it. And the very end, which was obviously very disappointing to any group. But one of the things at the end, I said, you know, there's different ways to get at being able to deliver what you need to deliver. Maybe we can sit down and think through ways that you can work more effectively. And that was kind of kicked off. Tom Smith and I met with them probably like 3 weeks ago in terms of beginning that conversation. And so that's an example of, I think, what we would like to kind of see within this process of not only looking to look for revenue, look for resources, but how is it that we're working more efficiently so that we can better utilize the resources that we have. But I'll just kind of pause there, and I can hand this out, and that's kind of the, that's kind of the first page of the document that we have here, and you don't have to read it here. You can read it at your leisure, and if you have any thoughts, you can certainly provide that. But this is what we will send out probably next week after we meet one more time. We will meet one more time to finalize this document. But it's pretty much finalized. We already reviewed it last night, but it would be just one last, make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed kind of review.
Okay, so, we also kind of talked about the process.
Yeah,
and
great.
I think we totally agree with everything that you said. I think the one thing, and haven't read this yet, and it may be in here, but the one thing that we, certainly the whole increasing hours, increasing staff thing, we really need to improve that, that whole process. Completely agree with that. I think the other thing that we need to do is to have a firmer deadline.
Yes.
Of when people, so after
right.
this date, just don't even bother.
That's right.
Or it has to be a really extenuating circumstance where both FinCom and Board of Selectmen say, yeah, that's really an extenuating circumstance, because they're coming in,
Last minute.
And
yeah.
coming to FinCom or coming to the Board of Selectmen and saying, we want to do this project, but we don't know how much yet, is not good enough.
That's right.
You have to come with a project.
Yes. Yes.
Fully baked.
Yeah.
That would be.
Yeah, in fact, we actually talked about that. One person brought that up as they reviewed the document or the letter. And so we actually did put in some more specific timing. So for example, things with personnel, we said by the end of January, that's it, right? You have to have that. You have to have all the discussions between the Board of Selectmen, Personnel Board, and bring it back to us by the end of January. So we do put those dates a little bit more specific in there.
good.
But if there's any other dates that we can think of, we can certainly talk about that. But I think in there, I think there are the
Okay, good.
milestones that are in there that they need to get to.
Yeah, and it's hopefully clear that it's a completed package.
Yep. And I think
we
that's
did that quite a bit last year, where people were saying, well, we're going to do this, and we think it might be this much.
that's right. That's right.
But it's just so hard to plan based upon that.
Yeah, I'm making a note here because when we get to the process, and the liaisons will begin to engage and work with them, that's something that they can reinforce as they're kind of engaging with the departments and the committees and such.
There were two other things, I think, that one was, we were sort of going back and forth as to who should identify preventive maintenance things in there. Should it be the librarian who doesn't, understand the central air conditioning system and how it works? Or should it be someone from, I guess we still don't have a project manager, facilities
Right.
manager.
Exactly.
But should it be someone from that committee? Where should that, in terms of who should be responsible for identifying those things? That was one thing that we were not very clear on, as I recall. And the other thing was, I think we could probably be more directive in the questionnaire in saying to folks, the Personnel Board does not approve any personnel changes. They only approve the paperwork that's required to identify a valid job description or something like that, but that it's the Board of Selectmen's, responsibility to approve. So if you say you have Personnel Board approval, that does not mean, as many people think it means, that it's an approved position. So
That's right.
It means the
Yes.
job description and the grade are approved. but
Exactly.
It does not address the need for the role.
That's right. And that's how we communicate. We actually say that they need to have met with both the Personnel Board to make sure the job description is correct, but also the need is actually approved by the Board of Selectmen. So we will not consider the discussion until they kind of get the okay from both of the groups, which that ended up to be kind of the
Right.
Makes it
wrinkle
a
for
little
them
clearer,
last year,
because
right?
otherwise they don't know who to start with. They don't know
That's
which
right.
end of the
right.
elephant to
Right.
grab
Right, and
hold of.
you kind of want to start with the Board of Selectmen, because why put the Personnel Board through the
Exactly.
process if?
Yes.
If they,
If
they
it's
don't
not
think
gonna
it's,
be-
that's right. And I think that's how we had seen it, which is, I think it first goes to Tim, and then he triages it to the Board of Selectmen in terms of, is this something that you guys approve in terms of going forward? And then the Personnel Board would go through the detail of kind of
Right.
working the other pieces.
Right, and this is something we identified as a goal for this year of
Right.
of
I was
fixing
here
this
for that.
problem, because I think right now the current flow is not what you just said.
That's right.
So we need to fix that, and,
Yes.
you know, we'll do that soon.
Great.
And work with the Personnel Board just to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what the process is, and then everybody else will know what the process
It's
is.
an honest misunderstanding of what
Sure.
the role of
Oh.
the various boards
Well,
were.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't something they were purposely doing.
That's right. That's right. Good. Any other thoughts from the process from last year?
I think, just want to say, I think that you guys did an excellent job in the presentation at town meeting. And it was, you know, very concise, had just the right amount of information, I felt. And I thought you did a really, really, really great job.
Yep. So I will convey that
course-
back to the committee. in
And
terms
of
what-
course, as I say, I think every time we meet, I mean, you guys are awesome. And, you know, the level of detail that you go through in this whole process, and the structure that you have to the review and everything, I think at least makes me feel very comfortable that, that we've got a really good plan.
Great.
So
Well,
thank you.
it's a continual improvement process, and I think they made a good headway last year. And if there's other things that we consider as we go through, we continue to improve towards
I
that.
mean, there's just been, you know, I've been on the Board of Selectmen for, I think, 4 years now.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm not saying it was bad 4 years ago, but it's just, you know, the level of collaboration has just dramatically changed.
Great, great. And I think you'll see that in terms of, as we kind of go through the process, that we want to continue those collaborations between FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, and kind of working towards that goal. So if you actually turn to the second page of the document, it actually has the beginning of the highlight of the process overview. And it's really 3 big milestones. The first one is really collecting the data necessary for us to begin kind of thinking through the next year's budget. And then the next one is actually the budget guideline, that's in December, that we issue that out to the committees and the departments, and then the final budget recommendations. So those are the 3 big kind of milestone points that we kind of work towards to get to that end goal. So just to highlight some points around the budget data collection, you know, we will send that letter out, just like we did last year, with the process letter and questionnaire. And then the liaisons will work with essentially the different departments and committees around, you know, filling out that questionnaire. I think in that, you can be assured that last year you received the responses to that, because I think it's important, because I think you often get people coming in talking about particular projects that may be coming up for the following year. This will kind of give you kind of the look in terms of each committee and each department, what they're saying that their kind of needs are and what they're looking at. So those responses we will send to you, they fill out the questionnaire, we will forward them on to you for review for that.
Is there anything in there, not to make it too complicated, but, never mind. I just looked down here and there is. You're asking for 21, 22, and 23.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
We
right.
did that last year already.
Yep, those are very similar to last year. The difference in terms of the questionnaire is the add on effectiveness. Are there initiatives, or what are your initiatives to work more effectively within your department or committee? Because we have these kind of constraints in terms of we don't have big build outs in terms of homes and things like that to change the revenue streams. Then we will have the budget meetings at the end of this, which is to review with them kind of the responses that they provide, ask questions, and really get that better understanding. That's where we'll invite, and we extended the invitation last year. I think, Kate, you joined us last year for those meetings. There are 2 days of meetings. This year, it looks like we'll have 2 kind of full slates, starting in the afternoon into the evening. But it was very successful last year, so we're going to continue that process. But you're welcome to come to those things. We encourage you to come to those, because then you'll be able to hear the departments and the committees in terms of as they're kind of talking through what their needs are for the following year. Okay? And then we go into budget guideline. We take essentially all the data and the information that they have, and we go and begin to develop the guideline, and then we'll have coordination meeting number 2 with the Board of Selectmen. Once we have that draft, we'll sit down with you, review what we've heard, and obviously if you've been at the meetings and or read through the responses, you'll have kind of heard as well, but how we've digested what we've heard into the guideline. And then we'll obviously have our second touch point, and once we finalize that, we'll go and communicate that guidelines to the departments and the committees. The difference this year will be that last year we communicated as a memo. This year will be communicated as a memo with the follow-up from the liaisons to highlight to them. So for example, if they asked for something in the original request in terms of the questionnaire and they didn't end up in the guideline, they'll sit down with them and highlight that and explain why. And I think that's one thing that was kind of an ad from last year that we thought would be valuable for the groups. So that, once the guideline is put out, then we're kind of marching towards the final recommendation. And what that means is that we now post, sending out the guideline, most groups that didn't get what they want, they'll say, well, we want to talk, we want to have that discussion. So based upon their desire for a meeting or our request for a meeting, in some instances we want more clarification, we'll have meetings with them beginning in January into February, which will lead into our next touch point with the Board of Selectmen. It's a working meeting, beginning to kind of work through to the kind of the final recommendation that we'll develop. Let's see here, I got that. And then once we have developed the final recommendation, we'll come back to the Board of Selectmen, do a presentation with you. And then it goes essentially to the public budget hearing and then to the town meeting. So that is kind of the overall kind of process. But as you see, there's lots of touch points that we have within the process with the Board of Selectmen, as well as an invitation for you to participate in all the different components as we kind of work through that process.
Great.
So any thoughts from the process?
When does this go out?
What's that?
When does this go out?
So our plan is we will meet again Monday, and dot I's, cross T's, and then it will go out right after that. But pretty much it's there. We talked about last night. I've actually put all of the feedback and the discussion points that we had from last. It's already in this document here, so it really is just dotting the I's, crossing the T's on Monday.
Well, in regard to what we were talking about was like the final firm deadline
Yes.
for new requests.
Mm-hmm.
I think it wouldn't be bad to put it in this,
Okay.
in here somewhere, maybe after 3, or, it's like, please note that this year, or whatever,
Yep.
I don't know, and then, or maybe before 3, because by the time we get to the final round of meetings, we don't want to have new things popping up,
That's right.
So I would say the budget guideline December, you might, maybe a small paragraph after that section saying, please note one new thing also is very strong deadline,
That's right.
and we will not take up any new items for consideration after that date, or
Right.
unless,
Yep. We'll talk about a
Yeah.
date for that
Yeah.
in terms of when that makes sense. I think it's implied here in terms of January, February being the discussions, and then March we're done, but
I understand,
think
but
we'll call it out-
I think
call it
I
out
think
more
I would
specific.
make it crystal clear,
Yep.
so that it's not a
You don't want
surprise.
anything coming in February, that's right.
Yep.
And
specifically.
last year, I think we had something coming in at March.
We did.
Yep.
And,
we
and
that
I
was-
think we're gonna do the same thing with our warrant, so that may be a second stop,
Yep.
but,
Yeah.
or first stop, I don't know,
Yes.
anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good call out. I think we called out, I can't remember where it is in this document, but in terms of personnel requests, it kind of ended in January, but overall, everything else
You did.
end
yeah.
in February, right? Right.
Yeah.
We'll agree upon a date, and then we'll put it right
Okay.
in the letter.
A question I have, not about the memo, but in the information that we get from the various departments, there's, it's always kind of in different formats, right? Though it was a lot closer to everybody using the format this past year.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember what was there, but I remember that I found that there was something that was really missing. But so there was, what is their budget request for this year? There's what was their budget what was their budget request for last year, and then I think the previous year, but nowhere in there was there, what was their actual for any of those years. So they're budgeting one year based upon what the budget was in the previous year,
Right,
rather
And
than
against the
ever seeing
expenses.
kind of like
what they actually spent.
what they actually spent.
Yeah.
And not that, I think that in some cases may just help us make sure that things are in the right bucket.
We do, when we send out the budget information to the departments, we give them a copy of their year-to-date report. They get this monthly. Every department or every committee. Every month Priscilla sends out year-to-date budget reports. It's in a different format. The reason is it would be manual. What you're asking for right now would be something that we would manually put together. I think that maybe we could get to that, but we are invoking on an upgrade to Munis, hopefully soon,
Hopefully
sooner
I'll
than
do what
later.
I said I would do soon.
And it's okay. And, we're waiting to be scheduled right now for the upgrade from Munis. But maybe there's something in that. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm not
So
sure.
even if it's, because I understand that, it's hard, it's hard to say, okay, well, so far this year to date, you're 4 months into the year or something like that. But maybe if there was the actual for the previous year. So if, here's your actual for the previous years, here's what you budgeted for this year, and here's, here's what you're putting in. Just some kind of an anchor to what's actually been
Yes.
spent.
Right.
Software that I've used in my previous town, we could do that. I'm not sure that we can do it with Munis, but we can look at it.
Okay.
Because it would be a good tool. If not, we can have at least, the backup data for each department. It would be multiple sheets of paper, which is not as nice and slick and clean, but we could do something like
That would
that.
be better, even if it was a
Sure.
separate report of here were the actuals, for
For this
last year,
and
and here's
last year,
year-to-date so far.
we can do that.
Then that's something that you could just refer
Sure.
to. But it just seems odd to only be looking at budget numbers.
Yes.
Sure.
Which may or may not have been hit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. Right?
Victor, Scott said last year that there may be some required changes in OPEBs in the balance sheet that the state imposes. What's a heads up on that? Is that changing anytime soon, or
Yes, it's this year.
what is this
It's
year?
This year, yes, so it will look different on the balance sheet. Scott and I both went to a session that was held by the Association of Finance Committees I think it was in the spring. And the speaker did speak at length about it. I've already sent out, in the spring, we had another OPEB valuation done by our actuary. So that data will be shown differently in our financial reports this year. It is, it's just constant changes. And it's a liability, and we're all in the same boat, I think, across the
Yeah,
state,
At least
so.
it's a funded liability now. I mean, I used to, when I was on the school committee, it was an unfunded liability, and they wouldn't allow us to put anything away for it. So, I mean, we complain about it, but still, frankly, I'd
Probably.
rather save for that rainy day.
Yeah.
Right.
Than to be caught flat-footed and suddenly you have this big bill that you
Right.
don't have the money for. So,
Right.
And another thing that, I'm sorry, were you done? One thing that's come up in the past several years by Board of Selectmen has been the question about, so I'm just gonna throw it out there so it doesn't come up later, has been the question about having all the costs of staffing within at least some of the bigger departments. So I just wanted to throw that out early in the process.
I mean, all the costs, meaning combined with like benefits and things like
Exactly,
that.
yeah, so when you're, when you're looking at, town hall administration, and you're looking at salaries, but you're not looking at that other, whatever, 40% or whatever it is, that would be, I think it could be that, there's a size that dictates it, because if it's a department of 2 people, do you really want to go through that hassle? But
Right.
just somehow properly allocating, because when we talk about adding new staff, that 40% is totally ignored, and
Is your question to put it to develop the budget that way? Are we gonna have two budgets, or, because that's,
No, it's to know how
or
much
is it
things
just a
are really.
percentage?
For instance, all of,
I would think it would be thinking about maybe a way, as we're doing this year's budget, that maybe in the following year's budget or something, some way of figuring out how those costs can be properly allocated to where the position is. We're allocating the salary there. But, you know, I mean, I look at my budget at work, and there's salary, and then there's benefits, and there's vacation time, and,
Right.
you know, and it's all charged to me, and so that's, so the company knows how much I cost, and I am a cost center.
Right. Right.
I think the difficulty with that is these are public documents, and health insurance is protected under HIPAA. So when we have departments of one person or two people, we don't want to show which people have health insurance and which don't, because then it becomes a case of, well, you know, this person takes health insurance and they take a family plan, so.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
know,
think, that's where I was
that-
getting at when I
I
was
think
saying
we need
maybe
to
there's a
be-
size, maybe
Yeah.
there, you know, maybe there's maybe there's a way we can identify it, you know,
Yeah.
okay, here's, you know, here's a group, you know, here's a department that has enough people that there's no way you'd be able to know, you know, but
Right.
obviously if it's, you know, town hall administration, and if that's just Tim and Jen, then you wouldn't be able to do that.
Right, right.
So you would.
Right,
you
and we have a
would
lot of
group
those
some of them
small
together.
That's right.
departments.
Yeah,
But I think that there's some budgets that are pretty small anyway, and so it would make sense to group them together anyway, and then there's
Right.
some budgets that are larger.
Right.
How about as a first pass for this year, what I used to do, what, in my prior town, was I would apportion health insurance, town school. That's how we did it.
that would be already a big help,
Okay.
because our school budget is larger than it appears. Because the town is paying for all those benefits, and I think that's important for us to start getting a handle on as well.
Right.
And I think it's important for the school to, you know,
Right,
I
because they don't
blame
see
them.
it.
Understanding that
The
doing
school
this-
has no idea
Right.
that that's,
The pressure on the health insurance budget, I feel personally, I feel responsible for it, and I watch it, and, but I don't have any control over it,
Right.
really. But I could provide data that would be more meaningful, at least to start, on town versus school. I think we could start with that. And the county retirement assessment, I already break that down every year also, town versus school.
Are there any other big departments other than just the school that?
The biggest departments that we have really are police. Fire is somewhat large, but police is the biggest, other than school department.
And so what you're saying you would be doing is we're not moving the budget, you're just showing
Showing.
it in the reports.
I could give you report data,
And that way it's still,
yes. And I could give you report data on how much we spend on health insurance for employees versus retirees, town versus school. I have that data. I
Okay.
prepare that every year.
Is it significant? Is the delta and those kind of situations significant? What I'm getting at is, you've come up with a 40% number overall, right? In terms of,
Sure.
that's what it amounts to. What if we just said 40% of everyone's salary is the uptick, and that would be a reasonable estimate, of what the actual budget
or
would
maybe
be?
it's 30% because not everybody takes
Takes
advantage of it
family
or something like
plan.
that.
Right,
Just some-
right.
Yeah.
Not
I
everyone
mean,
does, but
Yeah.
Maybe
we
there's
could come up
But
with
they
a
could.
number that
They
might
could.
match.
They
Everyone
could, and
So-
they can change
Yeah.
during the year. If a spouse loses insurance due to a job loss or retirement, or they have a baby, they get divorced, there are so many opportunities for a person to change their health
We're
insurance.
just interested in getting a sense of.
General sense of
yeah.
what it
Sure,
is.
we
It's
can,
it is a big number.
big number.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I
And
think-
it's a growing number. It's one of our biggest growing numbers.
It is.
So just understanding that number.
It is, and even just when I look at the health insurance every year and I see, okay, we have people retire, but the retirees stay on the health insurance. And then the new people come on the health insurance, so our numbers are growing. So I've been really looking at that analysis and
Yeah.
thinking about it, so I'd be
Maybe we
glad
could,
to
if-
share
At
that.
some point, maybe we could just see the types of things you could do rather than, you know.
Sure,
we'll
sure.
just-
That
then
would
we
be
can see- then we
easier,
can see
I
if
think,
it's-
than-
Then we can see if it's if
Right.
it's useful.
Because at least you can see the data and say, no, I don't like this, no, I don't, you know, but
turns
I
out
have
very
a lot of data like that, that is easier for me to put together than to get at the department level right now. But but I
think
do
we
a
need
lot
to
of
have the
town,
department level
town
too.
school. I do a lot of data
It's just
town
maybe-
school.
The only thing I might say is just maybe some of the bigger
Yeah. I mean,
departments.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
I don't want it to be a school-town thing.
No, and I
I'd
don't
rather-
mean
I'd
to
rather
be,
have
What we're trying
fire-
to do is get a
fire,
feel
police,
for
school,
how
and
much this is
the
costing.
That's right.
and the rest.
That's right.
we could do that.
In a certain
That-
sense,
I could do
the
that.
memo or the letter says that, you know, we have growing costs in the healthcare. Well, what is that, right?
Uh-huh.
I think that's what you're kind of
Exactly.
looking for.
And the reason that I do so many town school breakouts is because we have to do it for the school end of year report and for the audit. So there are two reasons that I have to break that data down already, and that's why I do it. It's not to look at, oh, the school spent this much, it's because it's a requirement.
Right, so
Reporting
it's
like that,
handy.
okay.
Right now, that's
And
the
I
handy
have
stuff,
that
right.
data.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you. Any other questions? So you are a committee of one tonight.
I am.
And I think
So
one
I've
of the-
We're ganging up
I've
on you.
taken notes to, because we did discuss the STM, the warrants
Okay.
last night, and I think we all kind of
Did
said,
you-
well, these
did
are
you
the key
vote, or-
themes. We did not vote.
Okay,
Because we have some key kind of, some questions that are still outstanding in our minds. So just as a kind of a backdrop in terms of kind of our lens, in terms of some of these, the warrants, anything that we feel that will hit 19 is certainly something that catches our lens, because we just finalized the budget. And we're already beginning to get some things that are not on the budget kind of adding up already. And then you know some, yeah, you probably know all of them. I mean, the fire chief, you know, going to a full-time. The teacher contracts is going to be an issue this year. We've had a transport, and I think you probably heard this one, transportation, where we've had to fund transportation to Neshoba Tech, and it's not inexpensive. They're looking for more cost-effective options, but at this point, it's quite a significant sum. The fire department tank needs to be addressed by the end of the year. And the recount, which is probably a small thing, right? So there's some kind of overtime or extra hours in the town clerk's office.
for the what, I'm sorry?
For the recount.
Count on third district.
It's Friday.
So there has been a small number of hours that, for the assistant to the town clerk, to just prepare the documentation that needs to be done for the recount itself, report to the state. It's not Mary's hours, it's not the counters, it's the assistant who has had to put in some extra time over the past, and Tim approved it for last week, this week, and probably next week also.
Okay.
So, and then I think we also discussed, and we all essentially compared notes, because we're all liaisons to different groups, and we came up with this list yesterday. And this will be something we track and we can provide to you if it's helpful on a, regular basis. You know, say, hey, this is what we're looking at in terms of things that were not on the budget that are impacting 19.
Victor, have you heard if Uber or Lyft are considered for transport to Neshoba?
I think they did.
Did they?
We looked
did.
into it, yeah.
They did.
It's Corey's requirement.
well.
When we were talking about students, we looked at the program for, that's really focused on children, that's like a Uber
Yes.
program, but they don't have enough drivers.
drivers.
We spent a lot of time looking into this.
But they'll continue.
And the school
They'll continue
did.
to look.
Dave Modell, Susan Prey spent a lot of time. I spent some time, Scott did. We've all met, and we've looked at a lot of
And
options.
I think you've already got it down from where it was initially, in
Yes.
terms of the amount, but it's still a sizable.
Well,
Yes.
Bill Risso's not on any committees anymore, maybe.
Well, I heard what they were paying for that. I said, I'll drive them, right? It's like, that's quite substantial, but,
Okay, so,
so in any case, there's a lot of things with that, and that's kind of somewhat of the lens that we're kind of looking at some of these things. But if it helps, I mean, what I can do is kind of go through each of the warrants and give you a few of the comments that came up in terms of our things, anything outstanding that we have. And then one of the outstanding things Carrie can answer for us tonight. But so warrant number 1, you know, the $100,000 or for the drainage, ambulance, the spray duct work. I think by and large, the finance committee understood that. You know, those are things that kind of are needed. I think we didn't vote on it, but I think generally kind of support that one. Warrant number 2, I think there was concern over the language in the warrant in terms of any other sum seems a little bit open in terms of what that could mean. I think this.
It didn't say no more than.
That's right. No, it
Yeah.
didn't say no more than, it said any other sum,
Yeah.
which is, the complete streets said no more than 84,000. So we, you know, the two together, you can, it pops out, because you can see the two, that they're written a little differently.
We asked for that to be changed at our last meeting.
Okay, and so will it be changed? That was a question that we had, will it be changed?
We
don't
thought
know.
they would. We couldn't understand why it would be expressed that way, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you come on up?
Hi, good to see you. Is it all right if I sit?
Absolutely.
Lori Hunter, Superintendent. So we heard that. We got this little trick of trying to get the articles to work in both towns. Probably the best answer I can give you is we actually have the bid out, and we're gonna open the bids late next week. We're gonna have an actual number for that second article as to what the engineers are proposing. So I expect at town meeting, we'll adjust it to the actual bid number that we've received, because the bid's contingent on funding. And we'll be able to give you a solid number, so it's not gonna be over the 200, I don't expect at all, we actually expect it to be under that, but we put the bids out so we'd have that in time for town meeting.
Okay, so when do you think you'd have the?
Our bids close the 15th, so the school committee should be awarding the bid based contingent on funding on the 25th at their joint meeting.
The 25th,
So a week before the meeting.
Yes, a week before the
Okay.
meeting.
and we meet next on the 24th.
No, we're meeting on the 25th.
On the 25th, we're meeting.
FinCom meets the 24th.
Yes, we meet the 24th. We're meeting Monday as well as the 24th. So
We will
Monday's
have
the
opened the bids by then, so perhaps there's some way to help communicate where we're at.
Yeah.
They're awarded the 25th, but we actually open the week before, so.
That would be
Yeah.
helpful.
That'd be helpful.
That would be good, because I think what I would like to do is vote on this on the 25th.
And we could do it on the
Yeah.
24th.
Because I'd like to hear exactly what the number is.
Yeah.
But also hear a little bit more about the numbers of some of these other things that you guys are considering.
That's right, that's right. You mean those, the kind of key issues for 19?
Yeah, I think we
Yes.
need to consider those same key issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think those things, you know, I think some of them we can fill in a little bit more. Some of them, like the teacher's contract, we may not be able to fill in more, but at least have a little bit more than we have now. The only thing we have right now is the fire chief. Kind of calculated what we thought the impact was
Okay.
for that. So warrant number 2, so that's warrant number 2. I think the other thing with warrant number 2, I think we had the conversation of like needs versus wants. I mean, warrant number 1, there's obviously, those are obvious needs that were excluded for whatever reason in terms of, you know, the original kind of work that was done. I think the group, given kind of the challenges we have with obviously the town in terms of generating the revenue and all that, I think that's where there was conversation about that. You know, we saw things like field house, ice hockey rink, and track, and is there a way to kind of carve out pieces that seem like more like needs in terms of what is actually scoped out? But that's something that we didn't kind of finalize on a conversation, but I'm just sharing with you kind of the climate of what we would discuss last
Right.
night.
And, yeah, so I think that what Mary Storrs was saying 2 meetings ago about that was, since they were engaging a consultant, they thought of things that they thought may come up that they could go ahead and get in this one, because there's an opportunity.
Right.
There's a scale.
Right.
But that didn't mean that we were then going to be going for a hockey rink. You know, but I totally see that point. I mean, I think, you know, parking is an issue.
Yep, that's right. When you
And,
put these
know,
things
we
in, you
really,
get that.
we really need to figure out how we're gonna solve that, but, you know, I don't know what the delta is in the cost
Right.
in adding those other things versus, you know, focusing on those things that are really
Right.
kind of critical things that need to be fixed.
That's right. At least from the standpoint of the kind of the kind of the design or the engineering kind of work that's being done, right? In
Uh-huh.
terms of looking at that. But those were kind of warrant number 1 and 2, kind of the key highlights of kind of what we discussed. I don't know if there's anything else that you
I
came
think
up
you've
with, but I
covered
think
it.
that.
May I just offer one last
Yeah, sure.
piece on number 2? We completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. The track and the field house and all that. None of us think is likely at all to happen without a significant amount of private funding. The trick is, and I'll speak more to the track because that's probably more the viable potential one, because of the groundwater conservancy and the bylaw and Concord of impervious surface, that if we don't do the engineering work, we can't even know enough to know if there's ever an option to do parking and a track. So our concern was to meet the need of the parking, make that decision now, and then come back later to revisit the track. We might inadvertently eliminate our option for a track because we put parking in the only spot the track could go. It's a very highly regulated campus through the groundwater conservancy in Concord and the bylaw. So everything we do to even consider requires an engineering study.
Right.
So we're trying to just maximize efficiency of scale, make
Yes,
decisions
that's
that can
helpful.
complement each other, not that the execution of those is gonna all happen simultaneously. And certainly, private funding is absolutely the mindset for the track and the field house ice rink, which I don't think any of us think is the most likely outcome here. It's what surfaced as a community consideration. So those are the want list versus the rest of it, which are the needs. The only reason we put them together is because if we do all the needs now, we might eliminate the want list sort of without even realizing it.
Right,
We don't
right,
think of it
depending
as
on the
a-
design and how you
That's
engineer
really
it.
the only reason.
Okay, that's helpful to understand.
And so this is a conceptual design and engineering, or is this you could go out and build it engineering?
So it's conceptual feasibility. Brian, do you want to? Brian Schlegel's our director of finance to help with all these technical questions. Director of facilities.
So it's basically just a feasibility study to tell us what's going on to the campus, what'll fit, where it'll fit. As Dr. Hunter was saying, we don't want to shut out some of the options. They want to see what we can actually put on this campus, and some of them, they may say, this isn't feasible at all for you. So that's really what it came down to, what we can actually squeeze onto that campus.
And a tool to communicate with the town boards in Concord, because we've learned very early here that if we don't have those conversations ahead of time, we can do all sorts of work and then not get approval.
Right.
So we really need engineering studies for anything to happen on that campus, so that we can work with the NRC and.
So when I
other
read
boards.
this, though, the way it's written is, in having seen these come up at different town meetings, the people voting on this would be expecting that there's a buildable document at the end of this, because it says design and engineering. So I'm wondering if that needs to be reworded so that it's clear that it's a conceptual design. It's not, okay, now, I mean,
Right, it's a
we would
feasibility.
then need to go out and have somebody design parking,
Right.
right? And we'd have to pay for that.
Right.
And people would say, wait, we already paid for it.
That's right.
And this $200,000. So I think this needs to be reworded to reflect
So I'll need to take that back. The trick is the Concord's
Already voted.
we've already voted them. I don't know, certainly the descriptor in the text box underneath is completely up for discussion. We could put the descriptors in to be what you feel you need to explain here.
That's what's in the
actual-
box.
Yeah, within
Yeah.
the box. So we're happy to look at that if the explanation could be clearer.
Well, I think you'd move feasibility up first. It's always the last thing in the list, and it probably ought to be the first thing in the list.
That makes sense. So that's the most malleable of what you have for language there is what's
Yeah.
in the box.
Right.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But we're happy.
There will be a
feedback's
lot of
important.
questions about approval of the next phase
Yes.
if there's design
Right.
in that cost. And people will say,
Sure.
we already paid for that.
Yep, we're happy to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Great. Oh,
Thank you.
Yep, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Happy to.
And then
happy
Article
to-
3,
So Article 3,
thank you for coming in.
Oh,
Deb already left.
pleasure. Good to see you.
So Article 3, there was two things that we had a discussion on. One of the things that, that Carrie can answer, maybe I'll just go through that one first, is where is this gonna be funded from? Because obviously there are certain constraints we have in how we would be able to fund this. And Carrie had an action item to follow up on that, and she actually had an update. I checked in with her before I came over.
So Tim and I have had a conversation, I think it was about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, about potential sources of funding for this. The first thing is that people automatically think of as free cash. Free cash will not be available for the special town meeting. There's been changes by the Department of Revenue, extensive changes in the way that we compute free cash. Concord has said that they won't have their free cash available for their meeting either, because of the number of steps that are now required to go through in order to get your free cash certified. So it will be, I don't have a date for you right now, but it will be much later than the beginning of October. Last year, I think it was mid-October when we had our free cash certified. It will be later than that this year because of the process that they've invoked. And our DOR representative came out to meet with Priscilla about this 2 weeks ago to go through the new steps that she'll have to go through online. It's new entries in the gateway that we use, and the process that we have to go through for our free cash. So we understand what we have to do, but it just adds to the timeline now and the amount of work that has to be done before we can get it certified. So the options that Tim and I had discussed a couple of weeks ago included a transfer from the DPW budget or using Chapter 90 funds. There are other options that certainly would be available to the town, like a transfer from the stabilization account, which would require 2/3 vote, or to borrow, which is 2/3 vote. And borrowing $85,000 it's a small amount. Do we really want to go through the work that's required to borrow that kind of money when we do have other options available? So I spoke to Gary Davis today about the potential options, since Tim's been out sick for a couple of days and we haven't been able to come back together to discuss it. And what Gary, and I agree with Gary, his best option is to transfer from the DPW budget, knowing, however, that we may have to backfill part, if not all of it,
Free cash later.
With the free
from
cash.
free cash later, or from another department, if we have monies remaining in different departments at the end of the year. Typically, Priscilla and I will look at all the departments at town meeting time. We know which departments are going to be running short, and then we backfill what we can at that time. And then later on, we meet with FinCom, Board of Selectmen to finalize the final transfers if we have any. And we've been doing a pretty good job of it, I think, up front. This year, we did a really good job, and we didn't have any transfers after town meeting. So we were able to at least scope out what we thought would happen. But right now, we're in early September. We have a long way to go. And I said to Gary, I understand the risk that we have with taking it out of your budget. You do have some money in your budget for road construction, but who knows what will happen, and who knows what kind of a winter we're going to have. There's so many things up in the air. But Gary said if he had his preference, that would be his preference, because if we took the money from Chapter 90, then he said if people are going to vote no because they don't want to transfer, then let's use Chapter 90 money. The requirements of using Chapter 90 would mean that he would have to present it to the state for approval, just like he normally does for his road projects. And he said something would fall off, certainly, because he already has in his mind what projects he's going to work on and the costs that are associated. But he said, one thing I want to caution you on is we've already done a couple of projects this year, and I've had cost overruns because of the escalation prices of fuel, asphalt. He said it's really hitting us kind of hard, and one of them was over 10,000, you know, just for his project that he already worked on with Chapter 90 money. So he said, you know, we're just going to have to watch it together. And Gary, he's right on board with this. He's part of the Complete Streets Committee. He said the money that we have to put into this is well worth it because we get $400,000 of work for whatever the design is. So he said, whatever we have to do, I'm on board, count me in, I'll support it, but I would prefer a transfer.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I would just say that, you know, given the inflexibility about the Chapter 90 funds, it seems pretty unfair to suddenly yank $85,000 out of what he's been planning to do
Exactly.
for the roads.
Exactly. And
And he doesn't get it back.
he doesn't get it back, and that means he can't work on some projects that people might say, why are
Right.
my roads still full of potholes?
Right, and we have a couple of those in town.
Exactly.
Um,
But Gary said, please
couple.
don't take it off the table if that's the, the.
Right.
Yeah, so,
So
but on the other
he-
hand,
Yeah.
so then there's, then, just looking at DPW, because there were other options, looking at the DPW option, just overspending basically is what we're saying.
We are.
And,
But
which
by
is
that-
generally what we do with snow removal anyway, but, just wanna make sure that that's,
But we likely wouldn't overspend because of the size of his budget. I looked at it today. It's a $1.2 million budget. We have town meeting at the end of April, so we still have May and June to pay people. That's quite a bit of the budget, the payroll itself. Street sweeping, things like that would occur in the springtime, wouldn't be done yet. So we're not gonna put him in the negative.
but we'll have winter.
We'll have winter, but we can overspend. There is no question that you can overspend on snow and ice.
Okay, so that wouldn't be.
That's not a problem, because that is
Okay.
totally allowable by law. It's not an issue at all. That's one item that we are allowed to overspend.
So the risk would be the town didn't approve a transfer of additional funds.
Yes, at town meeting. That would
town
be a
meeting.
problem, because you can't go in the negative in a department.
Can we, is there any reason why we can't just increase that budget at this special town meeting and not wait? Just have it a
There's-
part of this article?
Well, there's no money there are no additional sources of funds for us to raise and appropriate. We don't have anything that we can say,
Oh.
we're gonna get
We do
another.
the tax rate at the same time.
Exactly, we've already voted a budget, so unless we could come up with a new source of revenue, which I even looked at the cherry sheet, and there are a few $1,000s that are additional in the cherry sheet. I think it was less than $10,000 from the budget that we voted to the final version that got approved by the state. But it's not enough to really make anything
We can
meaningful.
take all of our salaries and pay.
So-
it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Multiply by 100.
And our benefits.
This does authorize us to borrow, so if everything else fails, we end up borrowing the funds.
Yeah.
We could, but that would have to be the motion, and it's
And
What it
two-thirds vote.
says, if town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer.
But the motion has to be one of those at town meeting.
Oh,
You
the
can't- Yes,
motion.
the
This
motion,
is the
we have to pick
article.
something.
Okay, got it.
So what I'm proposing right now with Gary's, with Gary
Yeah.
Davis's blessing is that we transfer from a department, knowing, because I want to be honest with you, we may have to backfill some, maybe all. Gary has given money back to the town the past 2 years, but he was running one person short in his department. He has filled that person's slot, so we don't have that wage amount to fall back
Right.
on this year, so.
And I think that in a certain sense is the aspects of, when you look at the transfers at the end, that you have to be considerate of as well. So we have this list of key issues that I just gave, and each one of those groups are gonna have to deal with those within their budgets as well. So, when you add it all together, what does it look like, and then obviously, then you hit free cash.
Right.
Any sense of how big we might, how much free cash we might end up with, and any sense of what other demands are gonna be made on free cash?
Well, typically at the budget time, we use some free cash when we develop the budget towards OPEB. We use some of it towards the budget itself. So we're really, whatever we do now could impact us in the spring for having less money to set aside for OPEB or for our budget in general. So that's the risk, and it's so early in the year.
It's hard to make that call.
It's hard to make that call. And as Victor said, we already know we've started a list of the incremental salary for the fire chief, the search committee for the fire chief. Hopefully, facilities will pick up any costs associated with the fuel tank. There'll be a small amount for the town clerk for the extra hours. So Priscilla and I are careful about keeping lists. Once we start hearing of things, that we know.
Yeah, so
That
it's,
we
yeah,
have
it'd
to-
be great to get a better picture of that list, but I mean, it seems to me like, for the purpose of this, we're not taking a position on it right now, but the transfer seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And especially the uncertainty of what that number even is gonna be. And if
Exactly.
we only get one of the four things funded,
Yes.
it could be
Right.
a
Right,
small
it might-
number.
it might be almost moot.
Right, right. it
Or
might
if
be.
we end up, we don't want to end up this situation, that 4 years shooting at it to try to
Right.
get it.
Right. Yeah.
Are there no other flexible means of borrowing without going through all the stuff that we normally have to
No,
go
it's
through?
municipal government, so.
Kidding?
So,
No, I'm
you know,
not.
when we
Discussed last
borrow,
night.
you can't just go to a bank, I can't do that. I have to have, I'd have to have bond counsel look at the article first. If that's the route we're going to take, we're gonna have to make a decision pretty quickly. I'll have to have them look at the article, and then what they come back with is a big list, once it gets approved, of, okay, we need this, and this from you. And it's multiple things. It's, what is the scope of the project? They're gonna want all kinds of detailed information.
So I would say, you know, particularly given the fact that it's probably unlikely we're gonna get all four projects in year one, given many towns got none for 4 years. Let's do the transfer, and then for our next meeting, if we could just have some kind of an idea of FinCom's position on these, because you'll be
Yes,
meeting
we will.
for us.
That's right.
And included in that, kind of like what you're seeing as those other things that factored into
Right.
your decision, and then we can, because then
Yes.
we be weighing the same information.
That's right.
And then hopefully, the superintendent will have at least a pretty good number for, rather than the 200,000, we would know. I
Right.
guess we can't
Yeah.
change that wording at this point, though, but,
Yeah. Yeah, and she said it was gonna be south of 200,000.
Right,
The
at least
concern was that the wording was
motion.
open, right?
Well,
the motion can say a different number, right?
Yes,
Yes.
Right, and so
absolutely.
the motion will have
The actual number.
the actual number, and then,
Yes.
so
Right.
we can take positions next time
That's right.
with more information.
Yeah.
And
But let's do the transfer.
on Article 3, if the decision is made to use Chapter 90, then we would withdraw the article, because we don't vote on just funds that are used for Chapter 90.
But we're not gonna do
projects.
chapter 90.
We're not, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would be a bad idea.
I think it would. I just keep thinking of, you know, how many roads do we really, can we do in a year? That's the thing.
I mean, it's unlikely to
It's-
have
we don't
that
get
big
a
an
lot of
impact
money.
on- It's unlikely to have that big an impact on him, but still, it's out there as a question, so he can't move forward with projects until he knows.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
So
right.
let's
It
tell
it
him.
kind of straps him.
We're only
Right.
talking about the 85K, right?
Yes.
What about the source for the other, for Articles 1 and 2?
The borrowing.
That's borrowing.
So it's,
borrowing.
our share would be, our share of the budget, which is about 26 point some odd %, would be attributable to
We're talking about
Carlisle.
65,000.
So it would be in our assessment. This year, there would be no cost, because the borrowing would occur this year as a bond anticipation note, so a short-term debt. So next year would start the process of paying back the debt and the interest. And
So
we
it's
would
still
get,
July 20.
But it's still a pretty small number, and you were saying the 85 was a really small number to borrow.
it is,
But
it's a small.
We're borrowing less than 85 in that
Exactly.
case.
Well, what happens is CCRSD borrows, and then
We
they
don't- we
assess
contribute.
us.
They're
We
borrowing
have
the
to pay
200K.
on their debt. So they're borrowing on our,
Oh, so we have to come up with the money.
yes.
right.
Yes.
Not-
They're
not a
borrowing
borrow.
on our Moody's rating and Concord's Moody's rating. So they're using our data to enable them to borrow funds, and then they assess us for our share of the debt.
So it just goes into our regular assessment.
It goes into
But
our
it-
assessment.
But it's not a lump sum.
Right.
It's just.
It's
the
gonna be a
payment
monthly
over-
mortgage.
Over the
Right.
term.
Of the
Right.
thing, okay.
And
Which
it
is-
starts in 20.
Yeah.
And it would start in 20. So what would typically happen, I've already talked to our financial advisor and bond counsel about this. Typically, we make all our debt exempt from Prop 2.5, and we add it on to the tax rate over and above. We can still do that. We could take a vote in the spring, when we have our election, and we could add a question to make this debt exempt. So that means it's not part of the budget, because it will eat up funds from the budget if we leave it as non-exempt debt. So that's still an option for the town, that
Okay.
I'm leaving open until we decide, and, you know, it's a decision to be made. how do we want to approach this piece of debt?
Okay.
And I think it really depends on how much gets approved, too, if we look at it. And then Kerry LaFleur and I think, would meet with the high school and tell them what we would like to see for the number of years that they borrow this bond for. So I would hope that, you know, she and I could make the decision together on how many years we would like to see the debt.
Okay.
So on 3, I just flag up one more. So that was one. So that was the discussion of that one item around funding. And this is something that, you know, if Deb got here a little earlier, I was going to ask her the question. But we had the sense in terms of when we spoke with her yesterday, but she had left by the time that the full conversation had completed, which is, let's just say we get the $400,000 next year. We had the sense that there was a time constraint when you spend it. And there isn't? There's not?
No,
Okay.
no.
We had the sense that you had to complete it within that year or whatever it ended up being.
No, it's a rolling.
12 months.
She told us 12 months.
She had 12 months.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So the question that we had is there a risk that we would not be able to complete the project within 12 months? And then what is the implications with regards to that? Being that these types of issues often involve other groups, the Historic Commission, other things in there, and I have an action to check in with you in terms of what their involvement in this process, you know, might be with the complete streets. So I think that was the other thing that came into our discussion, is like, you know, if you don't finish it, what happens in that case?
That's a really good question.
And, you know, we already put out, let's say, the 85,000 to do the design work, then that's, right? Because you now don't have the funds to complete it. And that was the other question that I wanted to chat with Deb about in terms of whether they had thought through some of that already.
Okay.
But that's a follow-up that
Chief
I,
Fisher
with
will
you
let
as
us
well.
No, before the 25th?
Yes.
Okay.
Pete was explaining to the planning board in her absence that it's a rolling kind of a thing, and they were anticipating getting it done way before the 1 year, and that they could go back for more money without having to wait another year.
Yes.
Yeah.
But your question about going, I mean, they were thinking there's no way this is gonna take more than a year.
There's going to
what's
be
on the
some public
table.
hearings.
Right.
Well, yeah.
That's the place where we're
Right, 'cause
concerned
there's-
about. Not so much the
there's scenic
execution of it,
byways
which
involved.
would make sense, right?
Well, yeah, Bedford Road's a scenic road.
Right.
right.
Scenic byways is gonna have to go to planning board, it's gonna have to go to
Yes.
historical commission.
That's right.
So
But-
2 public hearings.
So when that comment, I think we heard as well, that they think they could finish it, but did they consider these other aspects, approvals? Or were they saying they could finish it, project-wise, yes, we can finish it, it's a spring and whatnot. So that was the question that I was gonna check back in with there.
I'm
Yeah,
wondering
that'd
if
be
we could do some of those approvals during the design phase, though. So that's already done, so when the money comes in, you're just all ready to build. In fact, I think that's the way it should be done,
Yeah, but
because we shouldn't be submitting designs that aren't.
not approved. Who's the historical commission liaison now?
I am.
Maybe we could get you to go with the committee and just kind of give
Absolutely.
them a heads up if it hasn't already happened as to
Yep.
what's happening, just to start that
Yeah, heads up, and, yeah.
priming process.
Yeah.
Sure.
That'd be great, thank you.
I think the planning board is the byways, the scenic byways.
Yeah.
I wouldn't anticipate a problem with
Yeah, well,
that.
they've already voted to approve
That's right,
to support the 85, so.
yes.
Yeah.
Maybe just need to remind them that it might require a public hearing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great.
Great.
So we have one other topic with you.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah, so
Which-
we met with
Oh, yes.
Melissa.
Okay.
And we unanimously voted to recommend her to join FinCom for your, obviously, decision in that. Obviously, she has a long history of kind of service to the town. We had a chance to sit down with her, get to know her, let her know what is involved with FinCom. That didn't scare her off, so that's a good sign. So it's really for your decision. in-
Yeah, I strongly support this. I think she
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
does
think it's a
tremendous
great
service to the
idea.
town, and,
And if she's a partner at Nutter,
yeah, so I think,
she's good.
So I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Melissa McMorrow at 301 Concord Street to serve on the Finance Committee with a term expiring on June 30th, 2020.
Second?
second, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Very good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Sorry, we're half an hour behind.
What is, let's see.
Talking about the fire department. And we got updated in the packet, updated posting.
Oh.
And as I understand it, from quickly skimming the minutes and talking with Alan, the job description was approved last time when I wasn't here. Right?
No.
No.
Specific issues were approved, but not the job description.
Oh, I thought you were saying that the job
No,
description was.
the elements of the job.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So then we'll do that.
So Chief Fisher speaking on behalf of the committee with Deputy Chief Rubenstein. So there's three things I think we need to talk about tonight, if we could. That is the job description that we would like to use for this. There's the posting. And the third thing is the proposed advertising from MRI, so that we could get the word out and get the applications in. So I think probably the shortest, most obvious one, I know that Tim sent this out late, and I think you folks were on the list.
Yeah.
And then I also sent you what I thought needed to be changed from the committee's standpoint. I'm sorry, that's handwritten. Susan left it too, and I didn't think it was fair for me to take liberties to change it the way I wanted to. But I took into account what other people had said, and most importantly, what the members in the committees, the members from the fire department and the committee thought about the posting and the job description. And the posting itself is a one-page overview. I think the language is consistent with what you see for executives in public service. I think we had 4 tweaks. I think one was a typo in the first paragraph. You probably saw that's the fire department budget as opposed to the town budget, which is $547,000.
Although people would argue with you about that.
And it was both the committee standpoint and the member standpoint. I think we've already run by you that we'd like bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university, master's degree preferred, and 5 years of experience, not 7 in the command level.
Can I just ask you quickly
Yes.
why you took it out, why you took out in fire science, business, or public administration? I mean, what if they come with a, degree in English?
So we wanted the ability to weigh it.
Oh, okay.
We've got some. I think we'd be remiss in saying that we know of some people that are going to apply that have some pretty specialized degrees, but also have this fire science knowledge.
Okay.
What if you're stuck with somebody like me that has a bachelor's degree in education? I got a master's degree in public administration, but we don't want to ignore that person that has teaching credentials. And that might be desirable in a fire chief. So I think the problem is if you say something, you have to stick by it. And I think we're probably going to see a lot of candidates with the fire science, business, public administration. But is that okay with you? I mean,
Yeah,
A lot of people will
It's totally okay, I'm just asking why you
classes
took that
after
out.
they graduate at the
Answering.
fire academy at various state colleges, after they've graduated with some other degree.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was, feeling that with especially coming from a town like this, the commitment to education was one of the most important parts, rather than the particular field it was in.
Okay.
So I noticed that this posting differs in the number of years of experience.
Yeah, we went from 7 to 5.
So, well, no, it goes,
Description?
there's 7 to 10, and over on this one, so the 5 years of command matches.
Yeah.
But the other one is 7 to 10, and in the job description, it's a minimum of 10. So
No.
I don't care which one it is, but they should probably match, right?
All right, I went back through it again to try to make sure, because here's the third competing, not competing document, but the third document that we're also working on simultaneously, which is the actual job description that the committee's been working on.
That's this one, right? That's,
No, I don't know that you've seen, you haven't seen this. Allison, this is a member of the committee. So this would be, this is,
job description?
this is an
I don't know
ideal
which iteration
candidate
that is.
profile statement. So this describes their version of the ideal candidate.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we have that, we have the posting, and we
Right.
have a job description.
Yeah. And you're looking at
You
page
do
4.
have my job description.
Is it the same date? I'm just trying to,
This is April, something,
2014.
2014.
this has been updated, right?
So, I think you, I'm sorry, you remember the committee too.
Yeah.
Did you see my revisions?
Today, I did.
No.
Oh.
I sent this
Couple
out a
of weeks
week and a
ago.
half ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, all right, so that is what we have.
But I
working
don't
for
know
the
that
job
that's what was in the this was just what was in the packet right now.
Yep.
So I'll have to take a look at what was,
So this job description is what we're gonna have in their manual. We don't need this to go to,
This doesn't get posted.
yeah. It's clearly a different date than what you have there, though, chief.
nope, nope.
So throw this away.
Sorry, that's no good.
Oh, what we have is no
Out
good.
of date.
That's the out-of-date
Thing
one.
dated April 2014 is out of date.
It's
So
dated
when are
April.
we approving the job description?
So this is a September 2018.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing that I really feel strongly the committee needs to do is just ensure, we need, Deputy Rubenstein and I, and Tim agree on this, but we need everybody to weigh in on the job description, because this is gonna be what sticks.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yes,
Going
absolutely.
forward, this is what's gonna stick.
Right.
But none of us have read it
So,
yet.
but we don't need the job description to take care of the action items we need to do tonight.
Okay, just
Um,
saying.
As
The
long
idea
as
is
we,
to-
as long as we agree with this, because this is in
that's what-
core what's gonna be in the job description.
Right, we need to have MRI get started and post this so we can start the clock.
Yes.
We're getting responses.
When, ultimately, this job description really does need to be finalized ASAP. People need to kind of, so when I looked at this, and the job description do match.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So all the minimums match. This ideal candidate description, I do appreciate that they took time with this and incorporated some of the language that came up during the discussion that we provided them, which was nifty. I did pick up one thing that I don't think we want, and I'm going to kind of just ask them to reconsider that. I think they might have cut this from somebody else's, that they want this person to implement a long-range municipal fire protection and emergency services master plan. I don't think that was part of our goal. So I don't think the person needs to have that experience, nor be tasked with that and be thinking about
We could
that.
ask them to do in the future.
That might be something they want to do.
Right.
But I think this was in somebody else's.
Right.
So I just caught that before I came tonight when I was rereading this to make sure these all matched.
So,
Where is
so I
that?
just wanted,
So that's at the middle of page 5.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna
Yeah, this
ask
one
you to
is-
consider eliminating those 4 lines.
can I ask another question that's related to the ideal candidate profile? And I'm just coming out of the blue with this.
Yep.
This is, and I haven't spoken to you about this, so this is gonna be a new person, right, in this role. I'm just wondering, what's the history of the emergency manager being the fire department? Or since you have been here longer, should we have you be the emergency manager and this person is a member of that? I don't know. I just read this and it says emergency manager. I don't know if that is specific to fire or if that's emergency manager for the town over, for any emergency. If we assume that it's somebody coming in from outside, which could be a bad assumption, does it make sense to have it be somebody who's been here for a while?
Well, I will say that I have had a one-on-one conversation with someone else about this. with a member of your board, not on the committee, that is an experience I do have, perform for NEMLEC, and will be willing to do. I think ultimately that's your decision. It's the committee's decision whether I'm the emergency management director or the fire chief's the emergency management director. But the bottom line is that person should really have a significant amount of experience in this. And it's not in this job description that they have to be the emergency management director. I think that's nebulous right now.
So we should take it out of the ideal candidate profile.
Did we say they have to have
It
it?
says as
No,
the
it says
emergency manager.
As the emergency, it's saying they are the emergency manager.
Okay, then I didn't catch that.
It's page 3 at the bottom.
Yep, you're right. That's got to go. Are we in agreement to eliminate that paragraph? All right.
Well, you could, say, as a member of the emergency team, they have to, basic incidents, let's see, must, instead of develop and coordinate, must be able to cooperate.
Yeah, or
The
we
other
could just take it out of
managers
here and
or-
build that into the job description.
Okay,
Right?
right, that's fine.
It's definitely in the
So we
job
get this
description.
finalized
job
Okay,
tonight.
good.
Definitely in the job description.
Yeah.
That they need to have,
Take it out of here.
they should have experience and a place at the table with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right, let me try to get back on track here.
Sorry about that. It
No, 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 no. They're all great pickups, and then, sometimes it's really hard to read things for omission as opposed to read things for content. And
Right.
we all got this today. We've been all doing our homework at the, but we also, we're in agreement. We don't want to hold this up, and this is not.
No, it's-
This is kind of sharpening the pencil, because I think they really did a nice job with the job description. They did a nice job with the ideal candidate, and I think we're on a good track with the job description that the town will have. So, I think you probably caught that one significant thing I did add is the ability to serve as a full-time fire chief for at least 5 years. And then I took the 5 to 7 off the end of their ideal candidates. I don't want anybody to think about the end. It's like, just, if you can do at least 5 and that, I wouldn't want them to think that at 7, we're gonna try to push them out the door. That's certainly the opposite is the case. The salary, so I guess, as you take a look at the ideal candidate profile in this, if we think about where the posting's going, I think you probably saw that Tim sent the email out, and I think, I didn't have a chance to discuss this with any members of the committee, but I think if you read between their lines, they really, if you take the line that's right down the middle, that dollar amount comes down to $1,105 that we would be responsible for. So not taking that expensive option, I guess, and I haven't discussed this with you, and I'm sorry, I would not post this nationally. I would post this New England and go for the one tier down, go for the $365 price as opposed to the more expensive national postings and some of the national posting numbers. So, in essence, it would be $365 for the Monster.com and Boston.com. There'd be the $405 for IAFC, which I assume is the International Association of Fire Chiefs.
Yep.
That one, he just referred, so that New England posting is $405. That's actually the most expensive one. Massachusetts Municipal Authority, Association, which we asked them for, which is $75. Vermont, $60. Rhode Island is free. New Hampshire's $150. Fire Chiefs of Massachusetts is $50. And they're getting it listed at the New Hampshire Association of Fire Chiefs for free. So that total is $1,105. This is me.
No, I mean, that seems
Pretty
fair.
reasonable.
If for some reason we do not get adequate number or quality of candidates, then we can
Expand it.
just extend it and push the date a month and go that way.
Okay, makes sense to me.
Okay.
Follow your recommendation.
All right, so then I think I would just provide the feedback that thank you for this. If you could make these changes in the posting, make these changes in the ideal candidate, and we're opting for your $1,105 number for the New England type posting as opposed to the national type postings.
Right, so I think what we'd be doing is approving it as edited with you doing a final review at the end and with discretion and figuring out.
And there is one other significant change you made, which I agree with. I won't make any assumptions, but their description of the person must already be credentialed as a fire chief or have completed everything so they can be credentialed is probably not meaningful, because that says you're only going to find a fire chief. You won't find a deputy, a senior officer, or whatever elsewhere. So I think that's appropriate at this point to remove, because that limits it. I'm concerned that they're just going to go to their pool of known people that they rotate among.
Which is not what we want, but
Right.
how would it work when we hired, if they
Then
weren't
they're going to-
credentialed?
yeah, I mean,
So
it's
are they credentialed, do they have to be credentialed before they start?
no.
Okay, so we can have a fire chief who is getting credentialed. And what
And then
happens
there's
if
a
they
sequ-
fail to get credentialed?
That could be in your
The contract would be, okay,
Right.
all right.
And there's a sequence, and Chief Flannery can go through that. There's a sequence that makes most sense, depending on what their background is. If they're not, if they've been a good line officer but aren't familiar with town government, then there's a set of courses in chief office that have to do with that, and the rules and budget and finance and all that. If they have that part but something else, then they can do other courses. Eventually, there's a series of courses they'll take to get credentialed.
Okay. I have one other just kind of nitty thing here. Isn't Hanscom in Bedford, Concord, and Lexington?
It is.
And Lincoln.
And Lincoln.
And Lincoln,
And so we've kind of given those two towns, we don't like them.
I'm gonna make a quick break.
I'm not even sure why that's
I don't
in
think it
there.
matters.
It's kind
You
of,
could
oh,
just say Hanscom
it's kind of
Field.
it's kind of an attractive thing that
Well,
that
no,
the
it's,
person might be.
It's, I thought that was to list possible hazards.
Oh, yeah, possible other places. I don't know if they were taking a
I think
shot
it's
at
to
where
say,
you
hey,
go
there's an
from
airport
mutual
close
aid.
by, that might cause a problem, right?
I looked
Could
at
just
it,
say
I didn't,
Hanscom Field and,
I didn't love the wording of that
Hazards.
yeah.
either, but it didn't
I would
have
say take-
anything to do with the ideal candidate,
Right.
so it's kind of like,
I
I
would
thought
just
that
take the
was
two town
flowery.
names off out of it. and-
Town names off, got
Right.
it.
Part of it is just make it slightly more attractive. See, we're not just this little town, but
Yeah.
there's an airport nearby.
Right,
that might
exactly.
have something,
Okay, towns are gone.
to which we've responded to none in the last 30 years.
So is everybody okay with,
You amaze me how fast you read all that at the table. It's like,
I was here early.
oh, yeah, it's true. That's, okay.
Do you want more time?
No, it's all right. No, it really is okay.
Okay. I don't want to.
Do not want to put my oar in where it's not necessary. Yeah.
And the date will be adjusted to be 30 days from when they first make the posting. This assumes tomorrow, which may or may not be the.
Okay, so I just want to review what you're going to do. With the changes that we've just discussed and are outlined here in writing,
Yes.
you're going to provide that feedback, take one last look at it.
Yep.
You have discretion to fix things as needed, and we'll get this posted. We still have to work on the job description, but we're going to go with your recommendation for advertising.
Thank
So
you.
you guys can do that.
Great.
Good?
All right?
Yep.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's something we have to vote on, is it?
No.
Okay.
So on the
Well,
next
actually, we're
meeting,
spending
there'll
money,
be
we probably
very
do
little
have to
to
vote.
report, because all that would have been is a posting, the period would not have closed yet, because that'll be October 12th or 13th, so.
Well, okay, in case we need to have a motion about spending money,
Okay.
I move that we authorize the expenditure of 1,000, how much was it?
105, please, $1,105.
$1,105 for advertising the position of fire chief.
Second.
Okay. We have a quorum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Sorry,
time.
didn't need it.
All right. Thank you very much.
They put the belt along with the suspenders, I always say.
Thank you very much. Sorry we were so late. Okay.
You wanna finish that?
Item is still on town administrator's report.
Police union negotiating. Probably should
And-
wait until Alan gets back.
Yeah,
though.
we will, and actually, I'm just gonna jump out myself and I will be right.
Alrighty,
We have to wait anyway.
all right, well, I'll go get a drink of water, and I mean, if everybody's gonna,
Can I get you one?
I can get my own.
No.
I got my new mode of cooking.
Oh, so you can put weight on that.
Yeah, I can't put 100%, but I
Yeah.
can put a little. Don't sit down yet, Alan.
All right.
I'm coming out. But I have to learn how to work every time I get up, you know?
Goodness.
Well, it's not
Which one?
100%.
Which? You want that? Well, I made some notes on it, but it's,
I just wanted to make
that's
sure
a,
when that session.
no, let me, I
was
can make my
listed,
notes. No, you can have that. I just, October 12th or 13th is when we close down the applications. That's okay, you can add some. Thank you.
I think I probably just.
Move easier than you can.
Well. All right. This shuffling is the hardest. Okay.
Shuffling.
Do you still use your little scooter when you're home?
No, I use the scooter when I'm out, actually, like at, you know,
Trying to get around?
yeah, the mall and the market, 'cause, you know, things
Yeah.
like that. This is brand new. I just bought
Oh,
this
look at
today.
that. Is that the Hurricane?
It is.
Ah,
It
they
is.
actually sold one.
Wait, you designed it?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
There we go. Back in the saddle, so to speak.
yeah, oops, I took the too many things out. So I guess, before moving on to the town administrator's report, I do just wanna, acknowledge what, was also said in the public, well, input section, which is, you know, we did get resignations from, all of the members, or 4 of the members, which I think is all of the members.
Do
All
you
of
have a
them-
copy
all
of
the
that letter?
members. I
It would
may
be nice
have
to
one.
have a copy of that.
Yeah, I don't have it with me, it's on my phone. But, we all received, not only the letter that was sent, more broadly to the state of Massachusetts and Mosquito and, the Boston Globe, but we got the individual resignations from the 4 members. I can't, it's incredibly disappointing, that they chose to take this path. But we, I think that we need to kind of figure out where to go from here. We can't really discuss it tonight, but I did want to just bring it up and let you know what I think we should be doing and what I would do. I think, the very first thing I think we need to do is to engage with town council and find out what are the commitments, what are the legal obligations that the housing authority is responsible for right now to make sure that none of that falls between the cracks. And I will also work with town council on what you do. How do we go about, do we appoint people? What do we do for a next step? And I will do that I will work with town council and with Tim on that and come back with you with what I learn at the next meeting, and we will have it as an agenda item to discuss at the next meeting. We can't really discuss it now because it wasn't,
Right,
the timing is it's just not posted. But I think we can schedule what it is that we're going to do and talk about the schedule for the next meeting. And so I will find out what we need to do and bring that back to the board at our next meeting on the 25th.
I think council had originally said the ground leases were really the only things that they,
Yeah, and that could be, we just need to
We have to-
take a look. I
Yeah.
think there might be some reporting thing that they're supposed to do, but,
Right.
I have spoken to town council, and, asked him, what are the types of things we need to worry about? He said, these are the types of things you need to worry about, and I'll work on them with you, and so I will work on them and come back to the board.
Great.
Okay.
All right?
Anything you'd like us to do in the meantime?
I don't think so, and I don't think that I can actually assign that right now, because it's not.
Yeah. We could have a trust meeting, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should probably plan a
Mm.
trust meeting for, sometime in October. be my guess.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Now,
Yeah, I had reached out to Steve Perlman and asked him if he'd be willing to come and help lead a discussion at the next trust meeting, which would have been in October, and never heard from him. There is a Mass Housing Partnership is going to sponsor a meeting at the end of this month of, what a successful housing
Trusts.
trusts do.
Mm-hmm.
And we could all go there. I'll get the
Okay, if you
invitation.
can
I
send
just
that
got it.
around.
I'll get that
Yeah.
out to everybody.
So this is a very hot topic, obviously, and so I'm gonna stop the discussion
Yep.
about it right now. Okay. I just don't want people thinking we had a discussion without it publicly posted. All right, so moving on. So the Finance Committee has asked there to be somebody for collective bargaining. Unfortunately, there's no times here, which I'm sure that Tim had in his head as to when this was going to start.
For the police?
Police.
Yeah.
Probably gonna be during the day, guys, I'm imagining.
It is during the day. I will say I am a liaison to the public safety groups. The last time we did this, I agreed to do the negotiating, but I had to back out because it was during the day and I was slowing down the process, so John Gorecki took over for me. So while I would like to do it, I think that realistically, I would just slow the process down.
Well, I'm available during the day.
Okay, will you do this?
I'm just,
You're-
I am, I would be pleased to
Would you
do
like
it,
to
but.
do it, or-
I'm available during the day for a
Yeah,
little while.
see, he was
And then
not
I'll be,
gonna be-
and then I won't be, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I'm available for the foreseeable future, at least, available
Um,
during the day if I'm in,
So-
I go out for a week or two at a time, but I'm generally here.
Okay, and I'm,
oh,
He'll-
Luke is not here tonight.
Luke is not here, but we could
But-
revisit it next time. But I think I'm gonna speak for him that he's not available during the day.
Oh, well, so then
Right.
it looks like it's Alan and me.
Right, so
Because
we'll,
if they
we'll
want
make
two
it,
selectmen, it
and
would
if
be
if
us.
Alan, I mean,
Yep.
if Luke
Yeah.
feels very strongly opposite, but I
Okay.
know that, he's traveling a lot and.
Yeah. Okay.
So is there a motion,
Do we need?
or do we don't, appoint, yeah,
Or
is there a
vote,
motion to
we need to make
appoint,
the change.
Alan and Kate as the representative to the police union negotiation bargaining team?
So moved.
Second.
Okay? first and second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay. Okay, and we're going to get, Jen, you will let Tim know that we need more info on the town hours?
Yes.
Okay, and then moving on, I thought we already did moving on the
No,
common.
I
No,
got
we
it
just- we
circled,
did
which means that we
pumpkins.
didn't do it.
No, I thought that we did this.
Oh, no, that was
couple-
pumpkins.
We did pumpkins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, I thought we did it.
Oh.
Okay, so the Carl Kids
No, we
House, wants to have their, oh, you know what, I think it was around the 4th of July or something like that, or,
I put it in the papers too in the Oktoberfest.
yeah, well, there was a
Yeah,
movie
anyway.
one, I think that might have been around, Old Home Day.
Yes,
Um,
but anyway,
Go ahead.
I move that the board grant permission to the Carlisle Kids House to hold a movie night on the town common on Friday, September 28th, from 6 PM to 8 PM, with the understanding that they will coordinate with the town's public safety officials to ensure a safe and enjoyable event for all.
Second?
Okay, first and second, all those in favor?
Aye. They don't have a rain date, do they?
It's
Yes,
unanimous.
they do have a rain date, by the way, so I wonder if we should have put that in there or not, in that motion.
You can say
Uh,
amended to include a rain
Yes.
date of September 29th.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay.
Jen?
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Will we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries as amended. Okay, so just want to repeat again that on next Monday, September 17th, there is the speed limit public hearing. You will not be in attendance, right?
No, it's a master planning
Okay.
committee meeting that night.
So is there somebody who would like to be the moderator?
Let me see. I can moderate it. I can point. Okay, you.
Well, and you have your stick.
And I have my stick,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
Okay, can you,
I can beat
all
them.
right,
To moderate, you can enforce.
all right, so you'll moderate for us?
I'll moderate.
Okay, and so Kate will moderate. And then we have our regular Board of Selectmen meeting. We already have some topics on there. We'll be taking position on the articles. Sounds like we may be voting on a final job description potentially.
For the
And
police,
we will
yeah.
be talking more about the town hall hours.
Yes.
I would really like us to have a joint meeting with the Personnel Board soon.
Yes.
Um,
And we should have a joint meeting with the school committee somewhere down the
Yeah,
line.
I want to make sure that we're working through for the
Yeah.
budget process this, so maybe you could reach out and, I don't think it necessarily, we're not demanding they come to our meeting, but maybe we could just work out a time, either at our meeting, or if they could tell us when their meeting is, because I know they always have a very hard time getting a quorum. Maybe we might be able to be flexible and meet when they meet. But it's just, just to chat about process.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay, that's the pumpkin on the gardens. So I pulled everything out of here before, I think I should have. What did the master planning thing go with?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, that's, okay.
Liaison,
yes.
yeah.
I haven't put, it's number 7.
Right, but it's not listed on, in his
No,
report.
no, it's not part, no. This is under liaison reports, number 7, in here.
Oh, this was a liaison report?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Let's go on to liaison reports.
You got the big one.
The Master Planning Steering Committee is meeting, we'll meet again next, the 17th. And just updated the planning board last night about progress toward putting together an RFP to move forward with the planning process. Things were moving rather slowly, and the question was, do we really need a consultant to help us with this, or can we do it ourselves? That was sort of the, not quite an elephant in the room, but it was an unanswered question. And there are questions on I think some planning board members, and maybe some of us have questions, is do we really need to hire a consultant to get this done? So what I've just distributed was my attempt at estimating the level of effort needed to get this sort of a process done. And it became very clear to me that if we were to do it ourselves with nominally 600 or 700 or 800 hours of effort it takes, if you really, peel it all away and do it at a level of detail that says this is what it takes to get it done, we weren't going to have anything ready for approval at town meeting till 2021. And so that's where so I think,
Okay.
I think we're going to have to bite the bullet.
Not to mention the fact that those 200 hours still cost us something. It's not like it didn't cost us anything.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I would say
Yeah.
also, it's it's what keeps the process going.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, someone has to drive it.
Right.
And I think the committee chair now agrees. She's sort of taken that and she is a consultant in this very area, and so she basically recast it. And assuming that we would use consulting help for certain things, identify those, dollarize them, and so I think we'll be able to at least give folks a clearer understanding of why are we going to have to spend maybe $100,000 in order to get this done in a reasonable time without wearing everybody out in the process.
And getting a more polished and deliverable
Right.
product
Right.
that will
Yeah,
actually get to where we want to go.
yeah. So we're going to be discussing it next Monday night, and I'm sure they're going to want to report out to everyone that we will be asking for a warrant at next spring's meeting. And there are things that we can be doing with community input, that we can be doing ourselves in the process between now and then.
Okay,
So,
great. All right, thank you. Any other liaisons?
Go ahead, Kate.
I went to a magic meeting, which is I don't remember what it stands for.
Massachusetts, Middlesex,
It was a
Middlesex.
magical experience.
Yes.
Merrimack.
Middlesex. Yeah, I don't remember whether it's Merrimack or Middlesex. Anyway,
Massachusetts.
it's because it's, it's Maynard and Concord and
Mhm.
Bolton and, Lincoln and Bedford. So it's just our little subgroup of the MAPC, which is the Massachusetts Area Planning Commission, okay? And a couple of things were discussed, one of which is the stormwater. Apparently there's a new mandate that's, I think it's the end, September 30th, it all has to have been done, some sort of permitting for stormwater management. And we have apparently participated in that, and I was gonna ask Tim, but he's been out. It was like, what did we get? What did we do? How did it happen? And what they were doing is they were asking for a new approval for their next year's budget, and they want to spend $10,000 on a transportation area study, for instance. And they will have the MAPC actually do all the legwork, because it's a little bit like your consultant, that, we can't do it
Somebody gotta
individually.
drive it, yeah.
So, but it's interesting thing, but I guess my question was, how much do we pay? Because there's an assessment every year, and we obviously pay an assessment. That must be in our budget. So I had a question, I was like, well, how much do we pay for that?
Yeah.
And what do we get for it?
We don't pay a whole lot.
They
You
probably-
wouldn't have to know. It's a very, very nominal amount of money.
Yeah, it probably is, but I just,
Yeah.
it just was a question that occurred to me.
Actually, I think it's in the planning boards.
No, it's not in the planning
No?
board's, yeah, it's
Okay,
not in
then.
the planning board's budget, it's in our budget. And,
Okay.
so I do think it's important for one of us to be going, actually.
Mhm.
There are, selectmen and town planners and town administrators from all over, in fact, the, Littleton plan administrator was there, so.
Mhm.
Anyway, I just wanted
Okay.
to say that I went, and it's interesting, and there are some area initiatives that look interesting, and I hope we get something out of it.
All right, thank you.
I went to the Energy Task Force meeting on September 5th. They're actually very active, as you might, Bill Risso heading them up. I know you're going to be surprised at that. But they actually elected new officers. Bob Zog is going to be the new chairman, and Bill will be his vice chair. Debbie Bentley will be the secretary. There are a number of grants that they're out there pursuing and getting, and there were no particulars on them, but they're moving ahead with them. The big things is the school lighting project is moving forward. The engineering is all being done, and it's ready to go. The other building construction grants, Dan Cook is the project coordinator for the various contractors. Town Hall should be done before winter, they're hoping, along with everybody else hoping to get things done before winter. They're gonna put a charging station in at the library for electric cars. Eversource is funding it. They're gonna put in, the capacity will be there for 5 cars. However, they're only gonna put 1 charging station in at the moment, and it will be a pay-as-you-go, like they have at the municipal parking lots in Boston, where you, or the MBTA ones, where you use a card to charge your electric vehicle. The big thing is the solar planning. They've got bids in, or at least potential bids. They weren't prepared to give us details on them at that point, but there's the biggest one, I think, has the potential of providing several $100,000 a year to the town. Depending on how, that's one which would be both the canopy over the school parking lot and the school field and the DPW array. But they'll give us more information on that. And one of the things they've said, they would like to come and do a formal report to us at one of our meetings. And I said, we just tell, have Tim put you on the agenda, and you can come there. But they're very active, working quite hard, and making some good progress on a number of projects.
All right. This is a committee that brings in money for the town. Do we support them administratively in any way? How do they get these grants?
So there was a time when we were using a particular lump of funding that the town approved to share somebody at that Concord was using. That was for a specific period of time, and then we went through, and it was 2 years ago.
No, cut that position.
2 years. Well, we didn't
Or-
cut the position. We just the
person
funding.
left.
The funding was
Funding.
the funding was a specific time period,
Ah, gotcha, okay.
and that we were sharing.
Yes.
And there was something that was changing there, and so the Board of Selectmen at that time decided not to. And in talking with some of the Energy Task Force managers, they felt that they could do the grant writing, because it's not like there's so many of them, but they're big impact.
Yes.
But they can, that they could handle doing the grant writing. That's the history behind it. I mean, it was not a unanimous decision within the Energy Task Force as to whether or not that position was needed or not.
Okay.
There's a history behind that I can talk
All right,
about. Yeah.
well, I just think that we need to recognize the work that this committee is doing for the town. I mean, because we were just talking earlier about how our resources, our source of revenues are dwindling, and we have the TSAC committee who's coming in, we have the,
Yeah,
bringing.
what I've always supported, and I think we did it in a little way this past budget year, is if they're saving us money, we should probably take a percentage of that money and put it in a fund that they could then use to do other things like this. And
That's why I'm trying to, yeah.
we did do that, but this last time around, we decided, in the last budget, you may recall, we decided, well, we weren't actually gonna take the money from here and put it there, but we just funded it. I forget what
That's
it
true.
was, like
That's true. That's
$2,500 or something like that.
That's right.
We gave them
Yeah.
a fund so that they could do more of this. But I would be, obviously, you don't wanna spend all the money of their savings, or else you're not saving anything.
No.
But if there's a percentage that we all felt comfortable of, the savings, but the thing is you actually have to realize the savings, and a lot of what they have done has reduced the cost to departments, but the departments' budgets have not gone down. And so it's a fictional savings to the town. It's a savings on an item.
It
And
is
so we would have
yes.
to, so if we were to, I'm just saying, if we were to do something like that, we would need to make sure that budgets actually went down.
Absolutely.
And we could.
That's why we
could
kind
fund
of
it.
want this information about what did they actually spend and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yes,
Knowing
because
expenditures is important, because
it
if you
is.
change all the light bulbs in a town hall.
Right.
And now you're saving $10,000 a year, you should see that, and you should see a reduction in
Yes.
the overall budget.
Yeah, so,
Yep. All right, so I don't have any liaison reports, I haven't been in town. So as you know, because I wasn't at the last Board of Selectmen meeting,
Yeah.
sorry I dumped that you
That's okay.
at the very last minute.
I have one other, quickly, CCTV is no longer out of business at the end of the month, or in
that's
business
right.
at the end of the month, so Tim Goddard and I are meeting with Chris Phelan, the town administrator from Concord, next week.
Chris
And we'll,
Whalen?
Chris Whalen, and we'll try to conclude an agreement whereby we get essentially the same, no less than the same level of service from the town of Concord that we've been getting from CCTV. The one or two other things that we'd like to try to get is that they have a number of devices, cameras and audio devices at the studio at the high school. I think they have 4 or 5 of them that can be taken to places for use. We'd like to have one of those here at the community room at the school, so that school committee meetings, maybe finance committee meetings could be broadcast as well. And then have the ability to have some equipment to check out of the library for students' use to film things.
right.
So there's some, additional services we'd like to be able to offer the town, and bandwidth, basically. And that probably will not require additional staffing from Concord, because what we would use is volunteer services. Provide additional teaching, like we use with the COA. There's a volunteer person that does the COA program once a month. So that's sort of our intent. We'll see what happens. Chris has been very amenable to any suggestions, so I don't think there'll be any problems.
Meet
So
with
I had
him
a-
soon, because he's retiring,
I know.
So I just have a quick question, because Betsy Fells had asked me a question, and I still have to get back to her. I hadn't had a chance to reach out to you. There's also an agreement between the regional school committee and the new CCT, the town of Concord, on the lease of the space in the building. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. No, I haven't.
Okay, I'll
heard
send it
about
to you, and I'd like to chat with you about it, just making sure that Carlisle's
that.
included
Yeah,
in that.
Right. Right.
Um,
They have said that Carlisle students will have as much access as Concord students to the
Uh-huh.
studio facilities. I mean, they're not going to make any distinction that way.
Yeah, so I think
but
if there's this.
we need a
this-
document. We need a we
well,
need a contract.
And we need to know the full picture,
Yes,
right? So
yeah.
if they're leasing from us, because it's the regional school committee, to
Mhm.
provide a service to us, I think we just need to know where all the tentacles go. So I'll
Right.
send you what she sent me,
Okay.
and then maybe we can talk about it tomorrow, so that we can get
All right.
back to Betsy.
Will do.
Okay.
And just finally, there is a meeting of selectmen in Danvers coming up on the 25th from 7 till 10, and it's just sort of a get-together of selectmen in this part of the state.
7 till 10. at
7
what
till
time of
10
day?
a.m. at the Danvers Yacht Club, wherever that is.
Oh, I know where that is.
You know where that is?
Yeah, I sure do.
It's up a
Is that a
river.
weekday?
So,
Yeah, the 25th?
it's Tuesday the 25th.
Tuesday the 25th.
Tuesday the 25th, 7 till 10. I'm planning on
Uh.
going, because I've never been to one of these things, so I'd be happy to, if anybody wants a ride, I'd be happy to provide transportation, so.
I don't remember what else I had on
Us having a job thing's getting in the way.
There's a way to solve that.
It's nice not to
that
have
day.
to worry about
It's
that.
not a good
I did
long-term
look at that, and I
strategy.
can't, I have a doctor's appointment. I knew
Okay.
I
All
knew
right.
there was something for some reason.
Gotcha, all right,
Okay,
I might be able to go. I'll have to
Okay.
look at my calendar.
all right. I'll pick you up at,
Yeah, I
it's a
did look at that.
45-minute drive
I know where it
at
is.
that hour, you know?
I've been there,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, so
All
have
All right,
I. Okay.
thank you. All right, so
Minutes.
minutes. I wasn't here, so I couldn't really comment on it too much.
Okay.
I will
I
leave it
didn't-
up to you, Kate.
I did not find any typos. The only sentence I would have and we can discuss whether this is a good idea or not, possibly like to have had included on the first page after the one-day beer and wine application for the Oktoberfest was that Kate Reed requested that in future similar requests be signed off by the police department before being presented for approval by the board. And the only reason I want that in there is so that people on notice that that's kind of what we want.
Okay.
if possible. And I have that language right here, so that language is acceptable to everybody else.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
I move that the minutes be accepted as amended.
Yeah, and okay.
Was that a second? We got a second over here. Did you have any more comments?
No, I was gonna second it.
Okay,
That's okay.
alrighty. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. And is there a motion to, does anybody have any last items that they would like to? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Arg.
It's unanimous.
Okay.